That was epic because that was a $17,000 flight that costed me 81,000 American Airlines miles plus $7 in taxes. Serendipitously got exposed to this crazy world of credit card points and miles. And I quickly amassed like hundreds of thousands of points and miles and used that to fund my trip. 17 countries over 15 months.
What are even easy steps to start working towards that?
I have opened nearly 100 credit cards. I like not having to pay for anything. One card that doesn't get talked about.
Priority passes are everywhere.
In a 5-star resort that was basically free. Sure, they might have a nice sign-up bonus, but they also have like category multipliers and areas that you're gonna be spending the most money on. And just because you're opening credit cards doesn't mean you're spending more money than you otherwise would be doing. You don't have to be rich, you don't even really have to be middle class to be able to do this.
Anyone can capitalize on points and miles and credit cards and build a life of travel. Welcome back to the How Was Your Trip podcast, where we unravel the world one interview at a time. I am so excited about today's episode. I was already excited about it, but I recently polled you guys on my social media on what you guys want to hear in season 2, and travel hacking was number 1 on the list. So today I have Elliot Rosenburg, a travel hacking master, on today's episode. I talked to him about his entire story on how he started travel hacking, how did he get into the points and miles game, and what he does now to continue his travels. So let's get into it with Elliot Rosenburg. Elliot, welcome to the How Was Your Trip podcast.
Hey Sarah, excited to be here. Really pumped to talk about how your audience can save a ton of money and unlock some really cool travel experiences.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's jump right in. I would love to know, who are you? How did you get into travel and saving money while traveling? I'd love to hear all about your travel hacking journey.
For sure. I have been interested in and working in travel for probably 20-ish plus years. And I think it started with just sort of learning Spanish in middle school and high school, and being one of the few kids who paid attention and enjoyed it, and ended up doing some like high school exchange trips in Argentina and Spain, and then deciding in my senior year of high school that I didn't want to do what all the other kids were doing and go straight away to college, but I would defer my admission and go somewhere new. And I ended up going to Chile for a year, and ended up volunteering in like a after-school program for at-risk youth in the low-income communities on the periphery of Santiago, Chile. And that was just like a very formative experience for me. I learned a ton. Obviously, I improved my Spanish a lot by being there, but I got to explore a bit of South America and just get immersed in a culture that I had not participated in, and that sort of, I think, cemented things for me. And kind of building off of that, I ended up studying abroad in Brazil and getting into college, and I guess again sort of wanting to not follow the herd and not do the like finance, banking, consulting route that a lot of my peers were flocking into. And after my time in Brazil, I really wanted to spend more time in Latin America and just be able to speak Spanish, Portuguese. And I had the experience of living in a homestay in Brazil. And I found that to be an incredible way to really dive deep into a culture. And around that same time, I had visited a city called Rio de Janeiro, which is like the most electric, seductive, big city on the planet. And I fell in love with it. And I, at that time, kind of was a typical tourist, but wanted to go deeper. And I ended up coming back and getting introduced to these places called favela communities, which are often maligned in the press and media as being these like crime-infested, poverty-stricken, illegal settlements. But I found out quickly through meeting people from there, visiting them, that they were actually so much more than that. So that inspired me to sort of combine this idea of homestays with this excitement that I had for these favela communities. And back in 2012, when I was still a senior in college, I decided to start an Airbnb business in the favelas of Rio de Janeiro with the idea that I could generate sustainable income for families who are opening up their homes there and at the same time expose particularly Western travelers who had these negative stereotypes about the favelas to these really welcoming, warm, nuanced, fascinating communities that they otherwise would have never had access to. So I got a one-way ticket after graduating college. All of my friends were going to like New York and DC and getting these six-figure jobs, and I had like a few $1,000s in savings from like business plan competitions and grants from college. And I moved into the biggest favela in Brazil, and I started running this business. And it was a really wild experience.
I can imagine.
Yeah, in advance of the FIFA World Cup in Brazil in 2014, Soccer World Cup. And there's a ton of interest in that, and people looking to just save money, but also people looking to experience something new and unique. So we had a lot of business there. I was in like, I was just in the right place at the right time in terms of like press, media, and like, kind of rage baiting people with my concept. So I was in the New York Times, CNN, Wall Street Journal, and all that. And when the World Cup came, we had people from all over the world, like school groups to like elderly couples, families staying with us and the network of homestays that we had built. And it was awesome. I learned a ton, but I got really jealous of my customers because a lot of them were traveling all around the world and I was stuck in one place. It was an absolutely beautiful place,
Right.
but I didn't have that experience ever in my life of like waking up and it just being new and exciting and fresh. So I turned over my business to a new team and I took a backpack and I went to 17 countries over 15 months. Or let me back up and say that I did not have money to do that. And around that same time, I very serendipitously got exposed by a friend to this crazy world of credit card points and miles. And for whatever reason, it resonated deeply with my soul, and I dove in really deep and just read every blog that I could, went on every forum, and just started doing it, even though I didn't really have a lot of money. And I quickly amassed like hundreds of thousands of points and miles and used that to fund my trip, 17 countries over 15 months in Asia. And that was epic because, I was backpacking, but at the same time, I was able to experience some things that I never could have paid for, even if I had probably followed the traditional banking consulting route of my friends, like staying in some five-star properties, having money because I was saving on all of my other aspects of travel to do things like learn kite surfing or get certified in scuba diving or go on a 19-day trek in the Himalayas and Nepal, across the world's highest mountain pass, things like that. And then be able to ultimately fly in a first class apartment on Etihad from New York to Abu Dhabi, like 13-hour flight, where there was a shower at 35,000 feet, a chef personalizing my meals, like a suite that I had, a black car pickup and drop off in absolute luxury that I would never have been able to pay for, $17,000 flight that I got for $7.
Oh my goodness.
And I just learned a ton about myself through the travel along the way and dove deeper into points and miles and travel hacking in the process, and ultimately ended up in India. And I've been in India for the past 9 years.
Wow.
Ended up marrying an Indian woman a few years after I got here, who I met after I got here, and continued to. I had a day job and continued to do my travel hacking stuff on the side in India. And then we met each other, traveled for a few months to a bunch of countries together. I proposed to her, we got married, and then we did a really classic Instagram style honeymoon in the Maldives in an overwater villa in a five-star resort that was basically free. So that has gotten me to where I am now, and I'll pause because I realized I've talked a lot.
Well, I already have so many questions. I first want to ask, I want to go back to the very beginning. Did your did you grow up traveling, or was it not until high school when you started taking travel seriously? And then if you didn't grow up traveling, like were your parents on board for you just to move to South America as soon as you graduated? I have so many questions.
I'd say we took a few trips when I was a kid, more as like a teenager, once my family maybe had some more money and interest to do that. I think we went to Europe a couple times, but we did it super budget, um, like staying in the cheapest hotels, definitely flying economy and eating pretty cheap food, doing cheap activities while we were there. So that was fun and like good exposure and maybe like sparked a fire in me, but it didn't come close to the duration, intensity, and variety of travel that I had once I started going on my own. And then in terms of their feelings about the life choices that I made, I'd say like the first one that was kind of unconventional was the like deferring my college admission for a year to go traveling, or I wasn't really traveling. I was more like volunteering, living in Chile. So that was probably somewhat of a fight, an argument at first, but they came around to it. And yeah, that was like I went basically like 9 or 10 months without seeing them at all because I didn't come back and they didn't visit me. So that was tough. I'd say the much bigger fight was probably when I got to my, say, junior year of college. There was the point where everyone in my undergrad business school was more or less picking careers or at least starting their careers and taking the conventional routes. And I was going to, and I was an out of state student at a state school, so it was like basically private school tuition. And my parents were fortunately footing the bill for that. So they probably expected that after all that investment in my education, I'd do something more stable and profitable. But that didn't happen because I kind of went down this path of studying in Brazil, wanting to spend more time there, and just realizing that I would hate being a consultant and probably wouldn't be very good at it. And then beyond that, like taking it to the next level, the straw that broke the camel's back was like, I am going to now move to the biggest slum in Brazil that you don't know anything about other than it's like poor and violent and scary in your mind. And I have almost no money, but I'm going to live there and start a business there. That was a big fight.
So I'm guessing you studied finance in college.
No, I actually didn't study finance. I studied business.
Okay.
I think it was like marketing and management were the concentrations in my undergrad business program, but I was not the finance, stats, quantitative person, more the like entrepreneurship, creativity side of things.
Well, and I think that speaks to anyone can do this. Like anyone can capitalize on points and miles and credit cards and build a life of travel if they want to and put their mind to it. So I think your backstory is so cool. I think it's very unconventional how you got to where you are. Someone who wants to start traveling and doesn't really know how without a ton of money, how do you even start that life if it's not going to be let me go live in Chile and then Brazil and then move to India? How do you start, 17 countries in 15 months is insane. That is so cool, and that would be so many travelers' dreams. So I'd love to hear what are even easy steps to start working towards that.
Okay, so from the points and miles perspective, um, I'd say first we need to get out of the way some of the key disclaimers to to make sure that no one is going to get in trouble for following the advice that I give today. Everything that I'll talk about is totally legal, ethical, not breaking the rules, but it could be dangerous if you do it wrong or you're irresponsible. And the first thing is that you need to be financially responsible. So that means you need to have a budget and stick to it. And just because you're opening credit cards doesn't mean you're spending more money than you otherwise would be doing. Ideally, you are just shifting your existing spending onto cards that give you great points and miles and rewards and benefits. The other thing is that when you have a credit card, you are paying off the balance in full and on time every month. So if you are paying the minimum and thus ending up accruing interest or late fees, then none of this is for you. You need to get your finances and credit into check. You don't have to be rich. You don't even really have to be middle class to be able to do this, but you need to be like responsible, prudent, organized. So we'll get that out of the way. And then once we've clarified that, we need to understand what your financial goals are. Sorry, your travel goals. So when I started off, I was really just looking to travel as long as possible for as cheaply as possible. And I was fine to stay in like $15 a night guest houses and fly coach everywhere I went. But that might not be you, depending on like where you're starting in this journey. And my preferences have also changed drastically over time. The problem with the luxury stuff is that like once you fly business class, it is really difficult to go back to coach.
Yeah.
Or once you stay in like a 5-star, $1,000 a night resort in the Maldives, it's pretty difficult to then go and stay in a bunk in a hostel. So your preferences might change over time. You have to really understand yourself and like know what you want and then what are you like capable of doing. So with those goals in mind and understanding like what is your regular budget where you're not going to be spending more money than you otherwise would, then we can talk about credit cards, there are many kinds of ways to travel hack. I can speak most specifically and from my own personal experience about points and miles and credit cards. And there's sort of maybe two paths here. One is that you get like one, maybe two cards, and you just put all of your spending on that. That is probably going to be the easiest option for most people because it doesn't like require much thought or organization, but it's also going to be the least rewarding because the way that you rack up a ton of miles quickly is, especially if you're not rich to begin with and not spending a ton of money normally on credit cards, then it's going to be from the really big, generous welcome bonus offers that cards have. So if you're coming at it from the perspective of I just like want one or two cards, then look at the cards that, sure, they might have a nice sign-up bonus, but they also have like category multipliers and areas that you're going to be spending the most money on. Maybe it's dining, maybe it's groceries, gas, where you're going to get instead of 1 point per dollar, 2, 3, 4, 5 points per dollar. And you're not going to be dependent upon signing up for new cards, but still earning points at a decent clip along the way. So if that's you, then great. And there are a couple like cards that, depending on your categories of spending, would be a good fit for you. And then if that's not you, then you're really going to be chasing sign-up bonuses, it's what I did. And honestly, even 10 plus years later, it's what I continue to do because my regular spending is not that high. So that's going to be then doing some more studying to understand like what path can you follow in terms of multiple cards to really leverage the sign-up bonuses without then locking you out of getting more sign-up bonuses in the future. So that takes a lot more strategy and research. I don't think we have time to delve into that on this podcast, but those are the two main paths. And then once you have the points, regardless of which path you're on, assuming that you've chosen to earn points that are bank points that you can transfer to partners for the most value instead of just like going into your Chase portal or your Amex portal and cashing out your points for 1 cent each or max 1.5 cents each. You could instead transfer your Chase points to Hyatt and get 2, 3, 4 cents per point. Or you could transfer your Amex points to British Airways and get 4, 5, 6 cents per point for business class flights. So once you've got the points, assuming you've got the ones that transfer, which is generally what I recommend to most people, then you have to start understanding how you can get the most value out of them and practicing getting the most value out of them. There are a lot of like free software tools. My favorite for beginners is pointsyeah.com. It's just like almost like a Google Flights kind of, but you put in what kind of points you have and it tells you what are the best flights based on that for the lowest rates, and you can say whether you want to fly economy or business class. And at a high level, it's pretty much that. You know, I could speak for dozens of hours more about the intricacies, but we don't have time for that, and we can move on to the other area of things.
Yeah, well, I do have a few questions on that. So I think that most listeners here probably are in that first category of not full time travel, traveling a few times a year, want to capitalize on having a couple cards, not wanting to think too deep into it. I know I have a few cards and want to strategically get a new one. But for someone who doesn't have a single credit card, let's start from the very beginning. What kind of credit card, obviously travel credit card, is there one that you would recommend above all others?
Yeah, I'd say that if you're looking for one that has transferable points, which means you can get much more value from your points than 1 cent each when you go to redeem them, and it has good benefits and a good rate of earning, as well as no foreign transaction fees, which is really critical, though most travel cards don't have foreign transaction fees to incentivize you to use them when you're traveling, then there are two that I recommend. One is the Capital One Venture Card, which has a 2 points per dollar earning rate. Even if like you're lazy or you don't want to deal with all the like figuring out how to get value from your points, then you can always cash out your points for a penny a piece. Super easy. You just charge whatever travel expense, whether it's an Airbnb or a flight or a tour, onto your card, and then you can just wipe it off, erase it from your statement at 1 cent a point. And it's only got a $95 annual fee, and the sign up bonus is solid at 75,000 points. So that's like minimum $750 in travel. If you know how to use it, could easily be $3,000+ in like business class flights. So that's a good one if like really big annual fees scare you. But if you're someone who understands that you could have a big annual fee, but actually you are net not paying that much because you know how to get value out of the benefits of the cards, then the level up above that would be the Venture X card, which has the same 2x per point earning, but it also gives you you and your authorized users lounge access, not just in the Capital One lounges, which can be really awesome, but it gives you what's called Priority Pass, which is a network of like 1,300 lounges around the world where, you know, you could oftentimes get like a free dinner as well as a really comfortable space to shower, maybe even work out while you're waiting to board your flight, or you've got a long layover or something like that. And it comes with a $300 annual travel credit, so it's basically we can say net $95 since it's got a $395 annual fee. And every year you keep the card, they give you 10,000 points as an anniversary bonus, so that's worth minimum $100. I like to say that if you have the Venture X card, they're basically paying you net $5 a year just to keep the card.
Nice. That's such a great way to look at that. Yeah, I love that. And I want to go back to Priority Pass because I do think people sleep on it because it's not an Amex Centurion lounge, it's not a Chase lounge, but people don't realize that priority passes are everywhere. I have been in some very, very small airports. I've been in an airport in Rhode Island. I've been in a really small airport in Peru where there's been priority pass lounges and no other lounge. And so I really, really value having the priority pass. You know, it's great when I can go in like a Centurion lounge, but those are few and far between. Whereas priority passes, I'm going to be able to find those a lot more places, which I love.
Absolutely. Yeah, like I was just in the country of Oman a couple of weeks ago for a short trip. We had like a 3 a.m. flight, and there was a Priority Pass lounge there that had like full on free hotel rooms within the lounge. Like pretty solid
Wow.
with bathrooms, showers, nice bed. So we were able to like sleep for 2 hours in a free hotel room with a priority pass that I got for free from another credit card. It can range, like some of them, can be pretty iffy, but you could get like a really nice luxury lounge with that, like those rest areas and like full bedrooms depending on where you are.
Yeah, absolutely. I do want to go back to the portals just for a minute. Do you? I know that for the most part, it is most beneficial to transfer your points to the partner and then spend the points. Do you ever feel like there's a time where it's more beneficial to actually book through the portal?
Very rarely. If you have a Chase Sapphire Reserve card, which has a $550 annual fee, a lot of people have that. Just, I don't know, maybe like 8 years ago, it had a really big offer and a lot of people got it and just kind of kept it. Uh, but I don't recommend it to a lot of people, but still a lot of people have it. That one lets you use your points at 1.5 cents each. So occasionally for like domestic flights where there are no good points options and you're not going to be using your points for something higher value, then sure, go ahead, cash them out. I don't like that because the value is low, but also when you are booking through a third party, especially for a flight, it's if something goes wrong or you need to change your flight or cancel your flight, then you've got an intermediary as opposed to like dealing directly with the airline, which can just make
Hmm.
it far more annoying and complicated than it needs to be. And if you're using it to book like independent random budget hotels, then fine. But if you're using it to book like chain hotels where you could be earning points and status, then the hotels generally, if you've booked through a third party, just don't give that to you. So you're
Right.
missing out on that.
I would love to go into some details on like tips for best practices for earning and redeeming points. I know you said don't spend any more money than you would already be spending, but I know even within that there's some strategy. And then with redeeming, I know we kind of went into transfer partners just a little bit, but I would love to dive a little bit deeper into that.
Sure. So for earning, like hands down, for most people who have the organization skills, there are apps that help you like keep yourself organized. One is called Travel Freely. There's another one called Max Rewards that kind of keep track of your card portfolio and when you're eligible for a new card and when you need to meet the spending requirement to earn that big sign up bonus. But if you have the skills and the financial responsibility, you're just the right personality type, most people will earn the most points from sign up bonuses, hands down. But if you're not that person, then the second best option will be getting like maybe 2 or 3 cards that you've done the math on and the annual fees justify the benefits that you get out of them and you can keep them. And ideally those cards are aligned with your spending patterns for the bonus categories that they give. So one might be you spend a lot on groceries and dining. So the card that most people recommend is the Amex Gold card because that gives you 4 points per dollar on all of your grocery and dining. And 4 Amex points per dollar is like effectively earning 15% back on every dining or grocery purchase that you have if you're spending those points toward business class flights. Or maybe you are someone that like works as a consultant or you do a lot of like field sales and your employer has an expense policy that just lets you put things on your personal card and get reimbursed, then that could be like hotels plus flights. One card that doesn't get talked about enough, it's a new card, and also maybe for some other reasons in the industry people don't talk about it, but I highly recommend, is the Wells Fargo autograph journey card because that gives you 5 points per dollar on hotels and 4 points per dollar on flights, 3 points per dollar on all other travel. So like if you're constantly traveling for work and your employer is reimbursing you for everything that you put on your card, then that's a great way to rack up a lot of points. So those are like the two main strategies that are going to work for most people. There are other strategies out there, and we could have many more podcasts talking about them, but these are the ones that like I think will apply to most people.
What would you say about getting cards just for the sign up bonuses and then canceling them after a year or after using your points?
So I do that. I don't know if I mentioned, but I have opened nearly 100 credit cards in the past 10 years.
No, you did not mention that.
Yeah. So I am not advocating anyone who's listening to do that. I'm a very extreme case. There are people I've heard of who've opened multiples of that. But if you understand how the nuances of credit work, you can do that in a way that actually grows your credit score. It's like I have an 800 plus near perfect credit score. And honestly, after like 750, anything else doesn't really matter or help you that much, and people obsess about it way too much, and it doesn't really matter. So you need to understand the nuances of how credit works. You need to understand how each bank or credit card company considers new applications for cards, and there are all kinds of complex rules. A really well-known one that even people outside of the space might have heard of is Chase's 5/24 rule, which is a mostly enforced rule that Chase will not approve you for a new card and a new sign-up bonus if you have opened 5 or more cards in the past 24 months. Mm-hmm. There's some like nuances, caveats to that, but that's just an example. Each credit card company, each specific credit card product will have its own rules, and you have to learn them if you want to start getting a lot of cards. Maybe when you're first starting out, those will have less of an impact, but like by your like second year of doing this, you probably need to start educating yourself if you want to continue to get approved for new cards and take advantage of those sign-up bonuses.
Yeah, absolutely. What would you say is one of your favorite or most proud of travel hacking moments?
Yeah, I think I hinted at a couple of my like big victories. One was the Etihad first class apartment from JFK to Abu Dhabi, 13 hours, black car chauffeur pickup, great lounge access. Then you get like a big suite on the plane with a couch and a chair that turns into a bed, massive screen, sliding privacy door, chef customizing all of your meals, a shower that you can take at 35,000 feet, just like incredible, mind-blowing service. There's a bar on the plane where you can just like go and socialize with the other passengers. It's a massive plane, so it's got multiple levels and multiple cabins, classes. So the bar is in between first class and business class. That was epic because that was a $17,000 flight that costed me 81,000 American Airlines miles plus $7 in taxes.
Like, how did you even, because if you just go on American Airlines right now, those are not just everywhere. How did you find an 81,000 mile flight for, like, I just can't even imagine.
That's where you like start getting into more like advanced areas of points and miles. At the time, what worked, I have no idea if this works anymore, is apparently, so even now, but also back then, Etihad was a partner of American Airlines, so you needed to know that first of all. Mm-hmm. Then beyond that, you needed to know that if you're just searching like the American Airlines website, you would probably not find this flights. But for whatever reason, if you called the American Airlines call center in Fiji, you could ask them to search for availability for this flight, and for whatever reason, they could find it and you couldn't, and they could book it for you.
So why did you call them in the first place? Had you heard that?
Oh yeah, I had heard that, and I just followed that advice, and it worked out. I think it was something where I needed to book like maybe 2-ish weeks in advance. And also for some of these, especially first class, not business class, but first class flights, which are like mind-blowing luxury, for whatever reason, a lot of the airlines tend to release these like more last minute. Usually it's like 2 weeks to as little as like 24 hours in advance. So I just learned that, and I also got lucky and I booked it. But like I was just checking if that flight still is easily bookable, and now like I was going on the American Airlines app, and I was pretty easily able to find that same first class. It wasn't from JFK to Abu Dhabi, but from Abu Dhabi to Paris or Abu Dhabi to London, there are lots of first class seats available, like 4 at a time per flight if you're booking like 2 weeks in advance.
And I think that a lot of my listeners are Americans. And so I
Yep.
think that that just even blows their mind more because you can spend 20, 30, 40,000 miles just to get across the country on American
Yeah,
Airlines.
definitely.
So to
Yeah.
spend 81,000 for a bed and a bar and a shower all in the air across the
Yeah.
world is just mind blowing. That is so incredible. I think you said you only spent $7 to get to the Maldives.
No, so $7 on that $17,000 flight.
Oh, got
I'd
you.
say the Maldives was more or less free because of the different cards that I had. We stayed for 6 nights in the Le Meridien Maldives, which is a really awesome resort. We stayed 3 nights in an overwater villa. So where a lot of people have seen this on Instagram, TikTok, but it's like imagine like a hotel room out on a dock that juts out into the ocean, and you can like literally jump off the deck of your villa into crystal clear water and all kinds of sea life below you. That was the way that I was able to book that was because it was a newer resort. One thing that maybe a lot of people don't know is that when resorts open or they like get remodeled and they reopen, there are oftentimes lower rates on those resorts. So I had seen on a blog that this had just opened and the rates were like 35,000 Marriott points a night, 30 to 35,000 Marriott points a night. And like you could go to like middle of nowhere America and pay like 50,000 points for a random Courtyard by Marriott
Yeah,
and have
literally.
a way worse experience. So that was a deal I took advantage of. I think I got like one card that it was an Amex Marriott business card, and it basically paid for all 6 nights there because with Marriott you get your fifth night free when you book with points. So the stay was basically free, and then we didn't have to travel far because India and the Maldives are like a 2-hour flight from each other.
Right.
And then the main expensive things about the Maldives that you don't hear about on Instagram are one, you are in paradise, but you are trapped. You're generally going to be on a private island resort, and both legitimately because they have to import everything and it's super expensive to import all the just like food and drinks and supplies. It's expensive because of that, and then two, like because you're a hostage there, they can like charge you $45 for a hamburger.
Right. Right.
So that's expensive. And then the other thing is there's generally going to be a transfer from the main airport in Male to your resort. It's either going to be a speedboat or a seaplane. In this case, we took a seaplane, which is a crazy experience because those seaplane pilots literally like have an open cockpit and they're wearing either flip flops or no shoes and flying the plane and like wearing like like a Hawaiian shirt like what I'm
That's
wearing right
amazing.
now. So those flights can be easily minimum $500 to $1,000 per person round trip, even though it's just like a half an hour seaplane flight. So I had another card at the time that like gave me, I think, like $3,000 in just cash back. So I basically covered everything else, flights, food off of that. And to be honest, we also brought some food with us, and we were super shameless, and we would call the reception and be like, can you bring us some plates and forks and knives? And we had these like ready to eat, actually super tasty Indian meals that come in these like foil pouches, so they don't need preservatives. We would pop them uh, in the like kettle, the hot water kettle in the room that's meant for coffee and tea, and heat them up in there, and then like have our like Indian food meals while we're on our super fancy overwater villa to save some money. But we did also eat in the fancy restaurants too.
That's amazing. Whatever it takes to get there and
Yeah,
to make it through the week. That's
yeah,
awesome.
yeah.
Oh man. Well, I would love to play a little game that I play with all of my guests called This or That. I just ask you a few questions. This one is travel hacking edition, This or That,
Let's
if
do
you'd like
it.
to play. All right. I think I already know some of your answers based on our conversation, but Chase or Capital One?
Chase.
Chase. Oh, I was going to guess Capital One. Okay. When you're flying, window or aisle?
Well, if you are flying business class, then oftentimes you don't need to choose because there's just one row.
Right, right.
So it's the third answer, which is business class, and
Okay, I'll take it.
not sharing a row with anyone. But sure, if it's a coach flight where you're squeezed in with people, I'll take the aisle, so I don't have to annoy people to go to the bathroom.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. Okay, credit card benefits, lounge access or hotel free night award?
I'd say hotel free nights because I'm gonna spend like many more hours in that room than I'm gonna spend in the lounge probably.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Okay, Marriott or Hyatt?
Absolutely, Hyatt.
Hyatt, okay.
I'm a
And
globalist, but I'm expiring in like 6 weeks. I'm really
oh
sad.
no, oh no. Okay, and then hotel where you book your excursions on your own or all inclusive resort?
All inclusive resort. If you'd asked me like 5 or 10 years ago, I'd say screw that. But the all inclusive, the like luxury all inclusives, not like the dingy all inclusives in Cancun that you
Yeah.
get tons of like sunburnt Americans getting drunk at. Not that kind of all inclusive, but the luxury all inclusive. It's pretty awesome. I like not having to pay for anything.
Yeah, I think that's great. Well, I think this is a great time to plug anything you want to plug. I know you have a great company that I would love to hear more about if you want to talk about that a little bit.
Yes, absolutely. So, for couples who are looking to plan a honeymoon, we help them to leverage their wedding expenses to get nearly free luxury honeymoon flights and hotels with the magic of credit card points in a way that actually protects their credit, improves their credit, and is financially responsible. That being said, the name of the company is Hack My Honeymoon, but we work with non-honeymooners all the time, and we also work with business owners. Even if you're just like a solopreneur, sole proprietor, we help you to leverage your business expenses, your regular living expenses to not just take a honeymoon, but take a honeymoon or even more than a honeymoon every year and have awesome bucket lists, especially luxury experiences for pennies on the dollar, and not have to do it yourself, not have to learn all the intricacies of this and potentially mess up your credit, waste hundreds of hours, ruin your trips, and just have someone do it all for you like a luxury travel concierge.
I think that was something I did not take advantage of when I was getting married. And I think about the thousands of dollars you spend that could have been turned into points and miles to travel. Where can people find you? Socials or website?
Website is the best place if you want to get directly in touch with me, hackmyhoneymoon.com. There's a short form there where we just kind of understand your travel goals, what your financial situation is, and then we get back to you to schedule a free consultation where we'll answer all your questions and give you some free tips and then decide if it makes sense to work with you. Otherwise, we're more or less putting out tips and tricks in video form every day on social media, largely Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, and that's just my personal handle, which is Rosenberg, spelled Rosenberg.
And then last question, where to next for Elliot Rosenburg?
I am actually going to Tanzania in 3 weeks. We're doing
Amazing.
a safari. It's actually not a points redemption because we wanted to get close to the animals and in the wild. We're going to be camping, going to the Serengeti, Ngorongoro, which is this massive crater that might have wiped out the dinosaurs tens of millions of years ago, and seeing all kinds of cool big five animals, and then from there headed to the island of Zanzibar off the coast of Tanzania for stay at the Park Hyatt Zanzibar, and just some beach relaxation and cool cultural exploration. And then
That sounds
flying
amazing.
Qatar Q Suite there, and on the way back, stopping and doing like a day tour of Doha, Qatar.
I'm so jealous. That will be so awesome. Well, thank you so much, Elliot, for coming on the How Was Your Trip podcast.
Awesome. Thanks so much for having me, Sarah.
Okay, guys, I hope you loved that episode as much as I did. I felt like I could continue talking to Elliot for hours and hours. He was such a wealth of knowledge. If you do want to hear more from him, definitely go check out his website at hackmyhoneymoon.com. And while you're at it, go ahead and make sure you're following us on all social media platforms, How Was Your Trip podcast. If you have any other comments, questions that you don't want to leave down below, feel free to go ahead and email me at howsyourtrippodcast@gmail.com. Thank you so much for listening to this episode, and I will see you back here soon. Bye, guys.